when a white woman, suspicious of a young black teen simply sitting in the park and quietly waiting for his ride, decided to call the police, she had no idea how drastically her assumptions would backfire. Moments later, the teen's mother arrived, a woman whose authority would leave everyone speechless. Because she wasn't just any mom, she was the mayor. What happened next would go on to challenge a community, spark intense conversations, and serve as a powerful reminder of the fight against prejudice. Stay tuned and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and support the channel so you never miss an episode like this one. It was a peaceful afternoon in Prospect Park, Brooklyn. The sun hung lazily in the sky, casting long shadows across the lush green grass. 15-year-old Jaden was leaning against a tree, enjoying the warm rays of the sun as he waited for his mom to pick him up. The park was bustling with families, children playing, and joggers passing by, but Jaden was content in his own world. Suddenly, he felt a prickling sensation at the back of his neck. He looked up and noticed a middle-aged woman, Linda, sitting on a nearby bench. She was staring at him, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. Jaden shifted uneasily, unsure why she was watching him so intently. Linda's gaze didn't falter. Instead, she stood up, her face set with determination. She approached Jaden, her posture rigid and her lips pressed tightly together. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice sharp and accusatory. "This is a family park, not a place for troublemakers. You need to leave." Jaden blinked, stunned. He had done nothing wrong. "Ma'am, I'm just waiting for my mom," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. "I have every right to be here." But Linda's suspicion didn't waver. She reached into her purse, her fingers trembling as she pulled out her phone. Before Jaden could say another word, she was dialing 911. "Yes, I need to report a suspicious black teenager in Prospect Park," she said, her voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Fear settled in Jaden's chest as he watched her speak to the dispatcher. He knew all too well how dangerous situations like this could become. He prayed his mom would arrive soon. Within minutes, the screech of tires pierced the air. 2 police cruisers rolled to a stop near the park entrance, their lights flashing red and blue. Jaden's heart pounded in his chest as he watched 2 officers step out, their expressions guarded as they approached. "What's the problem here?" one of the officers, a tall man with a stern face, asked, glancing between Jaden and Linda. Linda stepped forward, her words tumbling out in a rush. "This young man has been wandering for hours. He refused to leave when I asked. I'm concerned for the safety of the families here." Jaden opened his mouth to defend himself, but the second officer cut him off. "We'll get to you in a moment, son," he said, his tone making it clear that Jaden's side of the story was secondary. The officers questioned Linda, nodding as she embellished her story. Jaden could feel the situation slipping away from him, his heart sinking as they turned their skeptical eyes back to him. "All right, young man," the first officer said. "Explain yourself. What are you doing here?" Jaden took a deep breath, trying to steady his voice. "I was just waiting for my mom to pick me up," he said. "I come here often. I wasn't bothering anyone." "Do you have any ID?" the second officer asked, his hand resting on his belt. "No, sir. I'm only 15, Jaden replied, knowing how it would sound. The officers exchanged glances, their posture becoming more rigid. Jaden could sense the situation escalating. A small crowd had gathered, several onlookers recording the scene on their phones. He felt a wave of anxiety, knowing that this moment could be broadcast to the world, his humiliation on display for everyone to see. Just when it seemed like things were about to take a turn for the worse, the low rumble of an approaching vehicle caught everyone's attention. A sleek black SUV pulled up to the park entrance. Jaden's heart soared as the driver stepped out. It was his mother. The air seemed to shift as Alicia Green, mayor of New York City, stepped out of the SUV. Her presence commanded attention, and the entire scene seemed to hold its breath. The officers straightened, their earlier confidence replaced by uncertainty. Linda's mouth fell open in shock as realization dawned on her face. Mayor Green walked with purpose towards the gathering, her eyes fixed on her son, Jaden. She could see the tension in his posture, the way his shoulders slumped slightly in relief when he saw her. It broke her heart to think of what he must have been feeling. Confusion, fear, humiliation. She knew this was far from over. What's going on here? Mayor Green's voice was calm, but it carried an unmistakable authority that cut through the murmurs of the crowd. The officers snapped to attention, their expressions now filled with hesitation and unease. The taller officer, trying to regain control of the situation, spoke up. "Ma'am, we received a call about a suspicious individual," he began, but Mayor Green cut him off. "Suspicious?" she repeated, her eyebrow arching in disbelief. She let the word hang in the air, her eyes narrowing as she studied the officers. "What made my son suspicious?" Linda, her face flushed, stepped forward, her voice trembling as she tried to justify herself. "He was just hanging around for hours. I thought." Mayor Green turned her gaze to Linda, her expression hardening. "You thought what, exactly?" Her voice was quiet, but there was a sharp edge to it that made Linda flinch. That a black teenager in a public park must be up to no good? That he couldn't possibly be here for the same reasons as anyone else, to enjoy the sunshine and wait for his mother? Linda's face flushed a deeper shade of red, her certainty crumbling under Mayor Green's unwavering gaze. She shifted uncomfortably, her confidence evaporating as the crowd looked on, their silence heavy with judgment. The officers shifted as well, clearly uneasy. The taller officer tried to speak again, but Mayor Green held up her hand, silencing him. She turned back to them, her eyes blazing with a mix of disappointment and determination. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice growing colder, "did you consider, for even a moment, the possibility of bias in this call? Did you approach my son with the same presumption of innocence you would have given anyone else? Or did you see his skin color and make a decision before he even opened his mouth?" The silence that followed was deafening. The officers avoided her gaze, their earlier confidence now replaced by a sense of discomfort and perhaps shame. The crowd, which had been murmuring quietly, fell completely silent, the weight of her words settling over them like a heavy blanket. Mayor Green took a step closer to Jaden, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. Her expression softened as she looked at him. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice gentle, the steely edge replaced by a mother's concern. Jaden nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. His voice was steady, though his eyes betrayed the fear he still felt. "I'm okay, Mom," he said, his words meant to reassure her as much as himself. Mayor Green turned her attention back to the crowd and the officers, her voice once again strong and resolute. "This incident highlights a critical issue that we can no longer ignore. We must do better, every single one of us. We need comprehensive anti-bias training for our police force and our community. No child, no person, should feel criminalized for simply existing in a public space." Linda looked down, visibly regretful, her bravado completely gone. She mumbled an apology, her voice barely audible. The officers, visibly chastened, stepped back from Jaden, their posture no longer aggressive, but almost contrite. Mayor Green's gaze swept across the crowd, meeting the eyes of those gathered, many of whom were still recording on their phones. She knew that this moment was important, not just for her son, but for every person who had ever been unfairly judged because of the color of their skin. "We must all confront our own biases," she said, her voice carrying across the park. "It's uncomfortable, and it's difficult, but it's necessary. Our community cannot grow if we allow fear and prejudice to guide our actions. Today we take a step towards something better." With that, Mayor Green gently guided Jaden towards the SUV, her arm around his shoulders. The crowd began to disperse, the murmurs picking up again, but now the tone was different, reflective, questioning. People were grappling with what they had just witnessed. The reality of racial bias laid bare before them. As they walked away, Jaden glanced up at his mother, his heart swelling with gratitude. She had stood up for him, not just as his mother, but as a leader who would not back down from doing what was right. He knew this was not just about him, it was about something much bigger. He took a deep breath, feeling the knot in his chest loosen just a little. "Thanks, Mom," he said quietly. Mayor Green smiled down at him, her eyes softening. "Always, sweetheart," she replied. "I will always fight for you." As they got into the SUV, Jaden looked out at the park, the crowd still dispersing, the officers walking back to their cruisers. He knew this was far from over, but for now he was safe. And that was enough. The story of what happened that day in Prospect Park quickly spread across New York City, igniting conversations about racial profiling and bias. The video of Mayor Green standing up for her son went viral, shared across social media platforms and news networks. People were moved by the raw display of a mother protecting her child, and it struck a nerve in a city that prided itself on diversity and inclusivity. Mayor Green used the incident as a platform to push for mandatory anti-bias training for city employees and police officers. She appeared on morning shows and talk shows, speaking passionately about the need for systemic change. "This isn't just about my son," she said during one interview. "This is about every person who has ever felt unsafe simply because of who they are. We need to do better, and we need to start now." Jaden, still processing what had happened, found strength in his school's debate club at Brooklyn Tech. The club had always been a space where he could express himself freely, but now it became a place of healing. His classmates listened in shock as he recounted the events of that day, their eyes widening as they realized the gravity of what he had endured. It was a stark reminder that the fight against prejudice was far from over, even in their seemingly progressive city. Jaden's story resonated with many of his peers, and soon the debate club decided to host a school-wide discussion on racial bias. The auditorium was packed, students and teachers alike eager to engage in the conversation. Jaden stood on stage, his heart pounding, but as he spoke, he felt a sense of empowerment. He wasn't just telling his story, he was giving a voice to those who had been silenced, to those who had never had the chance to speak up. Mayor Green faced pushback from some community members and officials who argued that the police had only been doing their job. But she stood firm in her convictions, refusing to back down. "We cannot afford to be complacent," she repeated in interviews and council meetings. "Every unjust interaction chips away at the foundation of trust our community is built upon. If we don't address these issues now, we will never move forward." Small changes began to take root, and Mayor Green's determination began to bear fruit. Police officers engaged in more community outreach programs, attending local events, and meeting with residents to foster dialogue and understanding. They participated in workshops designed to help them recognize their own biases and learn how to approach situations with empathy and fairness. Local businesses joined in as well, displaying signs of inclusivity and hosting events that celebrated the neighborhood's diversity. A new mural bloomed in Prospect Park, a vibrant tribute to the city's many cultures and a reminder of the importance of unity. It depicted people of all backgrounds standing together, their faces filled with hope and determination. The mural quickly became a symbol of the community's commitment to change, a visual representation of their desire to build a better future. Civil rights leader Keon Harold spoke at a town hall meeting that Mayor Green organized, his words resonating deeply with those in attendance. "There are thousands of black men sitting in prison who have been falsely accused," he said, his voice echoing through the room. "That's why we have to address incidents like this now. We cannot allow fear and ignorance to dictate our actions. We have to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard." The town hall was just one of many community meetings that took place in the weeks following the incident. People gathered in churches, community centers, and living rooms to talk about their own experiences with bias and prejudice. It wasn't always easy. There were tears, anger, and moments of discomfort, but it was necessary. The community was beginning to confront the reality of racial profiling head-on, and it was a process that would take time. Jaden, for his part, found solace in sharing his story. He spoke at local events, his voice growing stronger with each retelling. He realized that his experience, painful as it had been, could be a catalyst for change. It wasn't just about what had happened to him. It was about making sure it didn't happen to anyone else. His classmates rallied around him, and together they worked on projects aimed at raising awareness about racial bias and promoting inclusivity within their school. As the weeks turned into months, small victories began to accumulate. The police department implemented new policies designed to ensure fair treatment for all residents, regardless of their background. Officers were required to attend anti-bias training, and a new community advisory board was established to hold the department accountable. Local leaders, inspired by Mayor Green's courage, began to speak out more forcefully against injustice, using their platforms to advocate for change. The transformation was gradual, but it was real. people began to look at each other differently, not with suspicion, but with understanding. They began to question their own assumptions, to challenge the stereotypes they had once accepted without thinking. And slowly, a sense of hope began to take root. In Prospect Park, the mural stood as a testament to what the community could achieve when they came together. It was a reminder that progress was possible, that change could happen if people were willing to fight for it. And every time Jaden walked past it, he felt a sense of pride. His story had made a difference, and that was something no one could take away from him. Weeks later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across Prospect Park, the impact of that fateful afternoon continued to resonate. Jaden stood before the mural, his mother by his side. The colors of the mural seemed to glow in the fading light, the vibrant hues capturing the diversity and unity of the community. He traced the lines of the artwork with his eyes, feeling a sense of pride swell in his chest. This mural was more than just a piece of art. It was a symbol of hope and resilience, a testament to the strength of their community. "Do you think things can change, Mom?" Jaden asked softly, his voice almost lost in the gentle rustle of the evening breeze. There was uncertainty in his question, but also a glimmer of hope. Mayor Green looked down at her son, her eyes filled with determination. She could see the mixture of emotions in his expression: hope, doubt, and a desire for something better. She reached out and gently placed her hand on his shoulder, her touch reassuring. "Change is never easy, Jaden," she said firmly, "but moments like these can be the spark that ignites real progress. We just have to be brave enough to keep the conversation going, to keep pushing forward, even when it's hard." Jaden nodded, his gaze lingering on the mural. He could see the faces depicted there, men, women, children of all backgrounds, and he felt a sense of belonging. The mural wasn't just about what had happened to him. It was about everyone who had ever been judged unfairly, everyone who had ever felt out of place. It was about a community coming together to say, "We can do better. We will do better." As they made their way back to their SUV, the park still buzzing with people enjoying the evening, Jaden noticed the subtle changes in the atmosphere. People smiled at each other, strangers struck up conversations, and children of all races played together without a care in the world. It wasn't perfect, but it was different. There was a sense of awareness, of people trying to be better. And that, Jaden realized, was how change began, one small step at a time. The incident in Prospect Park had forced the community to confront the reality of racial profiling head-on. It had sparked conversations that echoed through City Hall, police precincts, schools, and dinner tables across the city. Jaden knew that his story was far from over. The fight against prejudice and injustice was ongoing, and there would be setbacks along the way. But seeing the mural, seeing the changes in his community, he felt a sense of hope that he hadn't felt before. What are your thoughts on this story? How do you feel about the way Mayor Green handled the situation? What would you have done if you were in Jaden's shoes, or if you had witnessed the incident in the park? We'd love to hear your perspective. Share your thoughts and join the conversation. Change starts with all of us, and your voice matters. Thank you.